Hey everybody, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Tanya Engel. I am with University of Wyoming and I am the Vice Chair of the Graphic Design and Publishing Learning Committee. At ACE this year, one of the biggest questions that I got was, how are we making our publications accessible? And so I started talking about this product that we use that plugs into InDesign. And I thought, well, rather than try and tell everybody individually what we do, I would ask Justin, who is the developer of the program, to speak to everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Justin so he gets the full hour. Justin, you ready?
Yes, thank you, Tanya. Can everybody hear me okay? Can't hear me. Okay, let's see. See what I can do about that. Can you hear me now? Yes, okay. An adjustment of that. All right. Thank you, Tanya. My name is Justin Putney, and I am the creator of In5, so I'll talk about that with a specific focus on accessibility today, because that sounds like what you guys are into. So just turn my camera on for a moment so you can see me, and see I'm actually here in a remote place. And I'm going to switch over to a presentation, and we'll just kind of walk through some of the basics, and I'll try and get you as much actual screen time as possible. Try not to spend too much time on the slides. And I'm going to give you a link that'll have a bunch of other links in it. It'll have an email sign up, so you can get emails from me on these topics. And so let's just start rolling. I'm going to share my desktop, and hopefully you guys are seeing InDesign right now. Let's switch over to the presentation. Okay, so we're going to talk about creating interactive publications without coding. I'm going to leave time for questions at the end. I can't really see the chat pod, but feel free to put questions in there, and I'll try and look at them at the end. We'll try and revisit. And again, I'm Justin Putney. I am the creator of In5. So it's shameless self-promotion, but I'm going to try and give you principles that'll work wherever you take them. They won't be unique to my product. This is the link that I mentioned a moment ago. I'll put it on screen again later, but if you happen to drop off, take down this link, and that way you can follow up and get more resources at the end. So we're going to talk about creating HTML interactivity from InDesign without having to code. We're going to look at ways to make it ADA friendly, American Disabilities Act. I kind of interchangeably will talk about ADA or 508 compliance, which is very similar. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with those topics or not. And then using these digital publications and presentations as a way to get greater engagement that you might have been able to get with past bits of technology. And if we have time, tracking. That's just going to be kind of an add-on if we've got some time. So why would you want to go to HTML from InDesign? Well, InDesign itself is a great layout tool. Most designers know InDesign, so it's very helpful if you've got a team of people. Most of the time, people know the basics. They know the layout. They may not know the interactivity tools, which are actually really quite fantastic. We'll look at some of those in a little bit. Going to HTML is one way to maintain the layout and the interactivity, and you don't have to do the coding within In5 because it will take the interactivity that you built in InDesign and take it all the way to the end. Now, when we're talking about accessibility, there's a balance between complexity and making everything accessible to a screen reader. So typically when we're talking about accessibility, it is exposing what's inside the page to a program that's going to try and read the screen to someone who most typically is visually impaired. So they're navigating the screen in a different way. There are, of course, ways that you want to accommodate people who might be hearing impaired, have different ways they interact, but primarily when we're talking about ACA and 508, that is one of the focuses of the web because it is so visual. So we're going to try and balance this because the most accessible type of content is going to be just plain vanilla HTML text just flowing all the way down a page. Any screen reader could read that, but that's not engaging to the majority of the people viewing your projects. So we want to try and balance those things and figure out how we can have a really neat interactive layout that brings people in and doesn't exclude people because they may not be able to see it or hear it or what have you. And we get, with that accessibility, we also get search engine optimization as kind of a bonus, because if the screen reader application can read it, it means Google can read it. If Google can read it, Google will do a better job of indexing it and making you show up in the search engine results if that's something you're interested in. So all these principles will apply to both those things more or less. So there are a few different formats that you can get both the layout and the interactivity from InDesign. I'm sure you all know by now that you should not be exporting or making Flash files, SWF files from anything because nobody has the Flash player anymore. The PDF, I will get into why it's not actually interactive, even though it's called an interactive PDF, but it has a lot to do with the Swift format above. Fixed layout EPUB can be good for certain things. It's great if you're selling to people who are on mobile devices. If you're going into that niche, it's really great. But everything is controlled by the reader app they're using. They all work a little differently, so you're not going to get consistency across platforms. If you want to do things like control page transitions, you can't. It's the reader app that determines what that looks like. It's always linear in a book format, and you just have these particular distribution channels, which are great if you want that distribution channel. It makes it easy to sell that content. But if you're doing anything outside of that little niche, it's kind of challenging. So HTML gives you this high flexibility. HTML is the technology that empowers EPUB under the hood. It's just that when it's fully exposed to the browser, you can do a lot more with it. So why not PDF? I'm just going to go a little bit deeper into that. Well, PDF has never supported animation from InDesign. That's always been lacking. At one point, it did support video, but that video was based on the Flash player, which used to come pre-installed with Adobe Acrobat and Adobe Reader. And so when that was all people were mostly using, you could send an interactive PDF to a client and have a good sense that the video was going to show up and play. Now, if you do that, good chances they're reading it on a different app, and even if they read it in Acrobat or Reader, those don't come with Flash Player pre-installed, so your video's not going to work. You can't use animated GIFs, multi-state objects, which I'll try and go into a little bit when we're actually in InDesign. These are one of the greatest things in InDesign. If you don't know what they are, they basically allow you to change the state. You think of a button as having like an off state and a rollover state. Well, multi-state objects let you create any variation of states. So they're great for creating pop-ups and overlays and toggles and all kinds of neat things. But there's a whole bunch of power in that. And again, those are never supported by interactive PDF. You also can't embed content like YouTube or Google Maps or anything like that. Any of the button actions that control these interactive things you couldn't use in a PDF. You could just basically use show and hide with buttons. You can have things like scrollable frames. And you can't control page transitions, just like that limitation I was talking about with the fixed layout EPUB reader. The page transition is mostly going to look like what the reading app says it looks like. And when we're working with HTML, we can actually control that. We can make something look like a flipbook, or we can make it look like a mobile app. We have control over that. So let me show you an example. This is a brand new example. I've just recorded a video. So what I typically do with these customer examples is record a YouTube video. You guys get to see this before anybody else because the YouTube video is being edited right now. This is a science and engineering fair interactive project guide. This was created with InDesign and exported with In5. I'm going to reload the page and take a look at all the animations that are happening. Right now you can see that this test tube is bubbling, but watch when I reload the page and you see what it looks like when we first enter. So it drops that interactive text, the rocket flies across, the rocket triggers these gears to spin, and it highlights this let's start button. This is one of the things these designers did fantastically well in this piece, was guiding the user along. So really highlighting this button, this is where we get started. And then they have tips that show up at the beginning, and we can go through those or we can skip them. Then there's 2 different tracks in here. And I'm going to click the engineer one. Again, watch this rocket, and you can see this cool animation that leads to the page transition. So again, this is all made in InDesign. You have these awesome things like this is an instance of a multi-state object. It's got this global menu you can go through. So you can always navigate wherever you need to, but they also done a really good job of guiding the user through. So there is no ambiguity as to how I navigate this. Again, multi-state objects, they allow us to do these type of pop-up things. We also have these external links. So these would go out to different websites. And as we go through these steps, this is another example of a multi-state object. They only prompt us to go next when we get to the last step. So again, this is really good in terms of nudging. This is a really well thought out project. I'm just going to go through all the way so you can see kind of how this works. And similar at this last one. So this is, I'm kind of enamored with this one. It's really simple, but it's really straightforward. It's clear. It's nice to look at. And it's just a fantastic user experience. So that's kind of an idea of when I talk about the balancing of the interactivity and the engagement. You can see this is a pretty exciting thing. This is not a plain vanilla PDF or a straightforward website. It really moves you along, both in the structure of the design and the animations that kind of catch your eye. So let's dive into some of the, actually, why don't I pause just for a second and let me just stop the share and just see if anybody has any questions. If you do have a question, go ahead and put it in the chat pod right now before I move on to the ADA specific topics. Anybody got anything? Okay, I'm not seeing anything at the moment, so I'm gonna keep on rolling then. Okay. And if you do have a question, we'll come back to it at the end. Okay, so again, I'm going to use these terms interchangeably, ADA and 508 compliance. There are a number of techniques. I'm going to show you how In5 does a lot of these things automatically for you. So let me go to InDesign. This is a this is the document that loads up once you've installed In5. So this is just kind of a way to get started and test things out. It's got a bunch of interactivity in it. Let me show you some of that stuff before we actually look at the ADA stuff. So there's a video here. This is a remote video, but you can place local MP4 videos and control them with the media panel. I'll show you another video panel in a second as well. This is an embedded video from YouTube. So that's all done in InDesign. All you have to do, if you don't know, is to go up to Object and say Insert HTML. And you can insert any block of HTML in there. So you can copy and embed code from YouTube or anywhere and put it right into InDesign. There are a bunch of buttons just showing that there's animation. I spoke of how easy the animation tools are. This is an animated star. It just spins around. And all I had to do to make that happen was select the spin preset from here. You can see there are a whole bunch of presets and really all it takes to make them happen is to select one of them. Most of these are supported by In5. There are a couple of the Swift only ones that do not. You can, of course, hide and show buttons, but most of the time I like to use multi-state objects. And there's also the ability to use radio buttons. So in here, these are all radio buttons. We go to the buttons and forms panel, and you can see that this is in fact a radio button. Each one of these is, and because they're in a group, they're going to be treated mutually exclusively. So we'll see those in the output. When I select one of them, it will toggle all of its siblings off. And there's also a checkbox, but kind of a fancy checkbox. So you get to see that in the output. This is an example of a multi-state object. So if I go into the object states panel, you can see there are multiple different states in here, different colors of the shirt, and each of these swatches has an action, a button action to go to the state that matches that. These back and next buttons go to next state and go to previous state. These are just actions added on to an on release event. So it's, again, pretty simple. I think there's some real ingeniousness in how this was set up, because I have not used another program that is easier to set up interactivity than InDesign. And it's really underappreciated in that way, because for a while we didn't have anywhere to put this stuff. There is liquid layout. I'm not going to go into that because that's kind of complicated. So that's like the bulk of the interactive stuff. And we're going to look at some of the specifics on these pages when we export. So let's just start by exporting. I'll go up to the easy export wizard and save it. This particular export option gives you choices of what you want it to look like. So why don't I start off by showing you some of the flexibility. So initially, let's just make a scrolling document. This will look kind of like our PDF might in Acrobat. So it's going to go through and process all these pages and render them as HTML. Right now, I'm rendering the text as images, so it's going to look exactly like InDesign. We're going to talk about how that affects the accessibility momentarily. So when I open this, you can see this has pages. It kind of looks like a PDF in a PDF reader. This is a table of contents generated in InDesign, and when I click on it, it works. It automatically makes the links without doing anything extra. There's the video. This is the embedded YouTube video. And here are the actions I want to highlight for you. And these are the radio buttons I was talking about. You can see only one at a time, and there's a fancy checkbox. And of course, we can navigate with buttons as well. Oh, and here's the multi-state object, so connects through these. There's a crossfade in there that's set up as well, but the hovering over those objects also works, those swatches. And then this is a multi-state object as well, same one, but this is set up as an auto-playing slideshow. So that'll just play itself. So let's start looking at some of the alt text. So alt text is one of those pieces, it's especially designed for images, but it's things in your HTML code that are then accessible to a screen reader. So let's inspect this object. I'm just right-clicking and saying inspect. This is one of the most fantastic tools. If you know how to use the console and the web inspector in Chrome, it's actually in basically every browser. You're way ahead of the game. You can actually manipulate things on here. Like if I change the CSS, I'm changing positions just by turning CSS on and off. You can see live updates on the page. So it allows you to experiment with a lot of things. So in looking at this is all one big image. If I open this in a new tab, it's a little hard to see with this transparent background that's black because the text is black, but you can see the red and the blue popping out. This entire text frame is one image. And all we have for the alt text is the first bit of there. So this text, the text coming through as images, can I export live selectable text? Yes, choose one, da, da, da. So you can see it's pulled text directly from there. Now I didn't have to do anything for that text to show up. So In5 is automatically creating some accessibility. It's creating alt tags, but we can also manually set alt tags, and I'll show you how to do that in InDesign. So any object that you have in InDesign, just to be consistent, I'll use this text frame. You can go up to the object menu, or you can right click on it, and you can go to the object export settings. In there, you can put any kind of text you want. Just set the alt text source as custom, and you could say these are frequently asked questions, or anything you want to put here. Okay, so that's when this is rendered as an image. Now, we can render this as text, and let me show you that. And go to export. Oops, I'm already taking you. This is the full dialogue, so there's a lot more than in the wizard, but let's stick with the wizard for right now. So let's take a look. This is going to look a little bit odd, but let's do it as a flip book just so you can see a completely different end of the spectrum. And I'm going to choose editable text and export. Now, again, it's going to process it. This time it's actually reading the text from the pages and creating live HTML. It's going to create CSS styles, and it's going to try and put the fonts in there when it can as well. So if you're doing this, you do have to think about font licensing. So let me go back to the browser and refresh. And just close this, and you can see how this is a flipbook now. This content, actually thinking it's still rendering as images for some reason. So we see how this display looks different. Let me go in and do the full export. And for some reason, it's still set to images. But I will change it to that. Let's do one more change. This is more of an app look. So the slider fade in will show you what this looks like in sort of an app style. And this time, yeah, it should take just a little bit longer processing some of the text. And then when it gets to the end, we're just going to hit done. And we'll go in and refresh. You see, again, now we have a completely different look. This looks more like the interactive guide, where we have one page on the screen at a time, and there's this crossfade built in. And now, see a chat question. Is the In5 plugin for free? Someone's asking. No, it is not. It's a paid plugin. We can talk about that more at the end. So I'm going to have trouble selecting text just because I have swipe turned on. I probably should turn that off. But you can see when I double click on text, it's actually highlighted. Let me swipe back. And I'm going to inspect this. And you can see all of the text is actually in here. So there's the alt tag that has the beginning of the text, or the alt attribute, I should say. But there is actually all of the text in here. Every single bit of it is inside the output. So from an accessibility standpoint, this is much stronger. But it can take more work to set up, because this is the example document for In5. I made sure that I'm using fonts that most people can see. And even now I'm seeing, I've got a few things to fix with the styles. But you can see this is actually live text. So those are kind of the two ends of the spectrum. And let me go back and show you kind of the in between. So we've got alt tags for text and alt tags for images. Let's go back to InDesign and let's again think about exporting text as images. I'm going to go back to this page that we're working on, and hopefully I have this script installed. This script is a free script that I'm about to show. It's called split text, and it'll break text up into multiple text frames. So you see the challenge with the alt text was that it could only pull so much. In5 only pulls up to 255 characters from your text frame because it doesn't want you to get punished by Google. If Google thinks you're trying to pad that stuff for search engine optimization, it might punish you. So we don't want to dump all the text into an alt attribute. So one way to get around this, if you really need to render your text as images, is to break the text into smaller text frames, and then each text frame will have, only enough text to be supported by many alt attributes, because you'll now have 10 alt attributes instead of one supporting all that text. So I'm going to go ahead and split this by paragraph and click OK. And so you can see now each one of these is broken into an individual paragraph. So let me save this and go back to the export, and I'll stick with this this kind of modern digital look. That's the slider fade in that we used. I'm going to do the text as images, which is the pixel perfect option in the easy export dialog. And again, it's going to go through and render this whole thing. If you go into the full export dialog, you have the option of exporting a single page if you just want to test. But I kind of like the simplicity of the easy export dialog for choosing options as well. So it's gone through and rendered all those. Let me go back to the browser and reload. I'll go to the frequently asked questions page. And now when I inspect these, what we should see is that there are a lot of separate images. So I don't know if you can, let me change this so this is docked on the side. And now when I highlight something in the inspector, you'll see it highlight on the left. So you can see each one of these text blocks, each paragraph is a separate item. And each one of these has its own alt attribute, right? So that is a way to really make everything a lot more readable, but keep the exact appearance. I've got one more technique that's really helpful for keeping the exact appearance, because that is particularly tricky when you're going to the web. The web is just not as sophisticated with text as InDesign is, and you can run into font licensing issues. Now, if you're planning a digital document, you can plan it with free Google fonts that are all designed to be on the web, and set that out. And it's like a little more work, but it's a big payoff in the end. If you look at the customer examples, there's one from Allegheny College that's just beautiful in terms of that. But let me show you another option. Let me just make sure, going back to my slides, that I'm getting everything. So the alt tags for images is the same as I just showed you for creating an alt tag that we did on the text frame. So I won't linger on that. But let's look at the mobile article explorer. So this is an example from a premium course on our video course library called Ajar Academy. And this is the starter course that Lori Rulin did. And this is a whole big document that you create through the chapters in the course. This text here is an image. You can see there's a lot of specifics of how this gets rendered. And so she chose to render this as an image, but there is this option to create a mobile view. So this comes up, and this is just a simple view. This is great for mobile readers. This is all selectable text, so all exposed to a screen reader in a much simpler format. It's way easier to read. So you have kind of the best of both worlds here, because this is much simpler than, you know, any HTML that's trying to incorporate design at the same time. Much easier for a human and much easier for a screen reader. And then at the same time, you have this exact layout. So all the time you spent making the layout and making things look good relative to each other, you haven't wasted that. And in that course, I won't go into how this is set up, but basically you set it up using the articles panel, and there's a widget, and you just turn it on and assign it to a button. So then this button loads up all this text, which gets exported with your output and put inside there. So that is another option to think about in terms of accessibility if you're wanting to maintain the layout. Closed captioning is fairly easy to do for video, so I just want to show you what that might look like. And I haven't tested it on this video because this is a remote video, but I think it should work. If we go into In5, you'll see there are some other cool things, and I do want to show you the build wizards in a little bit as well. But the interactive widgets are all these tools. They're kind of originally from the DPS world. If you know the digital publishing suite that used to be with InDesign, it used to have things called overlays. Well, people liked using those overlays, so In5 supported them, and then the overlays panel wasn't getting installed. So I basically built replicas of all of those, incorporated them into In5, and made them all a lot better. So if we look at the video one, we have a whole slew more options. And one of those is captions. So if you click manage, you can actually add 3 sets of captions. So you can do different languages. You can set the caption size. So if you want really big captions for, you know, maybe you've got an audience that is older, or for some reason is not blind but visually impaired, needs larger text, that's easy to do, and you can turn the captions on by default. Those are standard formats, basically a text file with time codes in it. Won't get into specifics, but all you have to do is point to that file and it gets exported with the output with your video. You can also do things like have an end action to your video. So you can trigger the next page, or you can trigger the next state of a multi-state object. So you can make a button pop up if you want somebody to act, to do something. You can do that there, and there's all kinds of autoplay controls and things in here as well. So that is adding captions. It's pretty straightforward, but it's a good thing to know that's there. Just a general tip, and mostly I'm not getting into general tips. There are things like thinking about color contrast that you want to think about, because another thing that comes up a lot for designing for accessibility is color blindness. And so you want to have a certain amount of contrast. There are tools that help you with that design, but obviously that's not really specific to what we're doing here. That's more just a thought you have to put into it. So kind of focusing on the technical things, but this descriptive hyperlink text one is just so easy to show that I want to show that to you. And that also is going to help with your search engine optimization. So let me just get that out of the way, and I will go down to I think that last page we were working on, that frequently asked questions page, is a good example. So this has several links in it, and you can see that the links don't say click here, right? So that super generic wording is not very helpful, because Google is creating backlinks, but also screen readers, and people, imagine somebody is sitting, you know, in the dark listening to a computer voice reading the text on screen for you, and it says, you know, see the thing, you can click here. It's not as informative as see the supported features page, and it tells you that's a link. So you know when you're clicking on that you're going to the supported features page. So that is just a little design technique that is helpful. You can take any bit of text, select it, and go to, let me hide this, go to the hyperlinks panel in InDesign and add a hyperlink to it. So I could send this to like Ajar Productions, and it'll create a hyperlink for me. So, and it's going to do it, unfortunately, it does it with the default settings. So like it doesn't pick up the character style that I would have liked, but I can change that. So it's really easy to create a hyperlink. When you're creating the hyperlinks, think about the text that you're hyperlinking. So that's just something you're thinking about in the process. Keyboard navigation, going back to this sort of app-like format. Let me get back. There we go. And I'm going to close the web inspector. So this is keyboard enabled by default. I'm using the arrow keys to go left and right. So, you know, that's something to think about. How do they navigate the screen when you're building multi-state objects, like things that pop up? You know, how are those going to work for the people? Those are kind of considerations you have to make. And again, you're always making this trade-off because, boy, when I can see this, this is amazing. And you don't necessarily want to sacrifice, you know, the majority of the audience is probably going to be able to see it. So you want to design something awesome for them, but you have to figure out how to make sure it has fallbacks built in. And part of that is thinking about how can someone navigate with a keyboard if they can't navigate with a mouse and see where that cursor is on screen. So those are kind of some of the bigger topics. Tracking. So all of these goodies, like I mentioned with the video, like if we were going to have an end screen pop up, so we could create. Yeah, well, this is a good opportunity to show you the interactive builder as well. So I got to have a pop-up get triggered. Let me show you what the build wizard does. I'll go into here and say I want to build a pop-up. I can make it light or dark. I think the style of this document is more light, so I'm going to do that. I'll make it a small dialog box, and it'll automatically style it for me if I want. It'll create object styles if I want it to, and that way I can style it in a way that when I create pop-ups on other pages, they'll look exactly the same. They'll automatically inherit those styles. So I'll go ahead and build that. And it's going to set this up, and it not only does it build the user interface elements, but it builds the interactivity necessary for this pop-up to show up. Now I need to have a button to trigger it, or I need to trigger it with a video end action. But you can see it's got this overlay. Even the overlay has a button action. So this works like any sophisticated overlay that you'd expect. When you click on it, it goes back to the content underneath. And the way it does that is with what I refer to as an empty state. So this is empty. This is the pop-up. So that's what's created with that particular interactive builder. And just while we're at that, I want to show you the menu builder as well. So this can build a menu. It automatically knows to apply it to a master page, or it gives you the option to if you're not on there. There are several different styles. I'll build a style that looks kind of like what we were looking at in this guide. Once we start one of these paths, this little hamburger menu. So I'll base it on a paragraph style. And of course I have to figure out, there's my page heading. So that's what I want. That's what builds my table of contents as well. And I will also make that a light UI color. And let me go ahead and build that. Okay, so now it's gone to the master page and it's building these menu items and it's telling us it's ready to use. So this is the menu. And if I go to the master page, you can see that in the object states, this has an open menu, or an open state, excuse me, and it's put all of these pages in there. So now it can navigate there. So this is just kind of a cool thing if you are new to interactivity and InDesign. Not only do you have this tour document that you can play with, so you don't have to build stuff from scratch, but you can use these builders because they actually make the interactivity. Like if I go into this table of contents, you can see that it builds the actions necessary. It makes this a button, so it'll first close the menu, and then it'll go to the table of contents page. So I'm seeing, I think, something in the chat. Wow, Shannon, thanks. Appreciate that. So this is a great way to explore interactivity if you're new to it. So you're not starting out from scratch. So those are the interactive builders. And then what kind of got me started on that was thinking about the video. And when you pop up this video, now let me go back to the master page and just hide this, put it in the closed state. So with this video, we can trigger an end action, and we can make a state pop up. And that state could have a button in it, and that could be a call to action. We're trying to get somebody to do something after they've gone to the video. Now, we might want to know how successful that is. Well, we can track that with Google Analytics. So let me just show you. Let me save the document, and I'll go up to the full export dialog. This isn't in the easy export dialog because it's a slightly more sophisticated option, but it's super easy to use. So when you're using Google Analytics, every Google Analytics property has an ID associated with it. Google Analytics is the industry standard. It's sort of complicated to read the information, but it's all in there. So there is a bit of a learning curve to it, but it's free and it's basically the one everybody uses. Like there's second place is so far behind it. So that's the standard that we're using here. And all you have to do to use it, normally you'd have to paste in a code snippet. In this case, all you have to do is paste your tracking ID in here. And then you can tell this menu, this set of options, what you want it to track. So by default, it's going to track pages. So you can see what pages people are looking at in your document, but you can also track those button clicks. So if you wanted to see whether or not somebody clicked your call to action button, you do that. You make sure when you create the button that you give it a name in the buttons and forms panel, and then that name will get put into your analytics, and it'll say, you know, this button got clicked 55 times. And you can compare that to the page views and see like how many people actually took the action that you wanted. You can also automatically track audio and video playback. There is a PDF download option that's in the viewer display. That's the bar that's displayed in the bottom. I don't know if you caught that, but there's sort of that option. It looks kind of like the publish online bar at the bottom. You can have the name of the document and what page you're on, stuff like that. Those are options are all in here. And in addition to that, you can track the social sharing. So if you check that, you'll see how many people shared it to Twitter, how many people shared it to Facebook, etc. And those options can pop up automatically in the case that we exported here. You can see these are the options. So we turn on tracking for that. You'd see how often those are used. So that's something that comes up a lot. People obviously want to see what's effective in their documents and what's working. So that's a really simple way to do that. And now I'm coming up towards the end, so I want to kind of jump ahead. This is the URL. This is a great way. I'll send you out relevant emails, and you can reply to me on this mailing list. And typically I do answer it. I have a few other people answering emails, but it actually goes to a person, and we do reply and try and answer you. So if you're interested in this, kind of knowledge, there's going to be more stuff in there. I also just have links on this page that I talk about in this presentation. So I encourage you to visit that. And so now let's take some time for a question and answer. And I'll leave this link on screen, but let me see if I can get to the chat pod. And so yeah, anybody who wants to ask a question, go ahead and put it in the chat, and I will answer it now. Oh, let me leave it so you can see the link. I'm not sure if you're seeing my chat window or not. I'll go back and answer Shannon's original question while you guys are thinking. The Implive plugin is not free. It is a subscription, and it ranges from $240 a year for a single user with the most basic features up. The next step up is $360 a year, and that gets you a bunch of the pro features like those builders that I showed you, and the flipbook format, and things like a 3D flip card, and the mobile article explorer is a pro feature as well. So generally, most people choose that pro account. If you have more users, there's discounts as you go up in the users. You can also, there's a monthly plan. And it's not connected to Adobe Creative Cloud. I'm a separate company. So it is you're paying Adobe doesn't do anything for me. So so it is completely separate. And we try and provide really detailed support. Let's see, I'm going back to, is the In5 relatively new plugin? Actually, In5, I started as a Kickstarter project in 2012. So it's been around for over 7 years now. It came about largely because Flash went away, and I was looking for a way to help designers create interactive content that would work on the iPad and elsewhere. So it's been around for quite some time. It's quite mature at this point. You have recommendations, tips, tricks for publication that include complex data tables. Yeah, data tables can be kind of gnarly. So In5 has the ability, when you export live text, you can actually render live tables. In that case, you would have the most accessibility. Yeah, getting accessibility on a table that's rendered as an image is pretty tricky, but rendering it as live text will give you all the text in the output. If that's a concern, is the accessibility. It does, the spacing changes a little bit. It's something I'm still trying to figure out, but HTML and InDesign do not treat like table padding quite the same. You don't notice it on small tables, but tables that are like the full height of a letter page, they start to get taller for some reason. So that's something you might want to play around with. There is a trial of In5, so if you guys are considering using this, I highly recommend testing out the trial to make sure it works for your document. Next question from Tim. Say we built a 40-page publication for a 4-H member to raise rabbits. Maybe it has some of the requirements for ADA compliance. How does this approach create an ADA compliant document for a member who uses a reader? Well, the ADA issue is going to change quite a bit. I mean, you could see as I was exporting the document just how significantly different it was when I chose different options, right? The flipbook is really different from the app look, which is really different from that document look that scrolls vertically. That document look that scrolls vertically is obviously the one that is kind of most exposed initially, right? All the text is there, everything is there right away. So that might be the most accessible one, but you can, with that huge amount of variation and the huge amount of variation that you can create in an InDesign document, I mean, you can literally, after 7+ years of troubleshooting people's documents, you can literally do the same thing. If you export it to a PDF, you probably wouldn't see the difference, but you could do the same thing in InDesign like 8 different ways. And I've been amazed at the way people set things up, and just it's totally unpredictable. So it really does depend a lot on what you export, how you formatted the document, and how you set up the elements in InDesign. So what I would say is it's probably going to be an iterative process. You're going to have a testing application for the ADA compliance, and you want to do like a test run, and then run it through that test platform and see where it dings you, and then go back and see how you change that. And it's going to be iterative. And there's probably a case, if you're using In5, where you're going to come back to me and say, hey, this thing isn't very ADA compliant, this particular component. I have a customer right now at a university who loves In5, but also has this strict ADA compliance. So he put out something, but he said, we didn't include video because there was this issue with our particular video and ADA compliance. So he sent me a list, and I'm going to go through and see about improving those. So it's kind of a moving target, both for you and for me, but it's just an iterative process. And if it's if N5 gets you close, then I would say just keep giving me feedback, because my goal is to make it better and better in terms of ADA compliance, because there are a lot of people like you out there who want to create ADA compliant documents, and they want to make them, you know, fun, like that interactive project guide. They don't want to make them plain vanilla pages that you just scroll down through text, which, you know, if you have a strict ADA compliance requirement, you might want to go that way. Like this, if the ADA compliance tops everything else, then probably N5 wouldn't be the best tool for you. And InDesign has the capability of exporting sort of basic HTML, right? So it flows almost like, it flows like a post. It flows like HTML from like 1999. And so you have to do some setup, but then everything is just fully exposed to the browser. It's just text. And let's say you don't care about the fonts used and that kind of stuff. You know, that's where ADA compliance might top out the design. But where you're trying to balance those things, you know, it's going to be a process. And it's probably not going to be, I'll be honest, I'll do my part to make it as easy as possible, but it's probably not super easy. It's probably an iterative process, because you're going to want to create really cool, complex things that maybe aren't going to be as compliant. And you don't have to offer the same thing to everybody, right? You need to, like, you might not be able to do fancy, like make a fancy multi-state object fully accessible, but if it's not necessary content, you know, if you provide good alt text, that might be sufficient. So it's really specific to what you're making and how strict your ADA compliance is, and what you're trying to do for your audience in general. So I think I'm caught up on the questions. Anybody else have any questions? Yeah, you bet, Tim. Yeah, I know that was a long and windy answer, but it really is, it's just that complicated and that specific. If you have more questions, pop them in the chat pod. We still have a few minutes left. I would encourage you on this link. There's a link to customer examples, and they're all YouTube videos. They're all relatively short, and so you can see kind of the wide variety of things that people are creating with InDesign and N5, and not coding. So if that's something you're interested, if you're more design oriented and wanting to build interactive stuff, the variety is well highlighted in the customer videos, because they've created things that I haven't even anticipated. Oh, thanks, Cameron. Appreciate that.
Okay, well, if we don't have any more comments, why don't we go ahead and wrap up? Justin, thank you so much for sharing today.
You're welcome. Thanks, Shannon. All right. Thank you, Alverson. Appreciate it. So, yeah, Shannon says, I'm so old school. I never done anything interactive with InDesign, just print. Mind blown. That's awesome. Oh, good. Tim's got a question. Yeah, even if you have a question on deck, let me know. Then I won't head off. Yeah, I think a lot of people have just been doing print in InDesign, and didn't even know the interactive stuff was there. It's been there for several versions, well before CC, and it just hasn't gotten its due. But it's really easy to use, and it's a good way to leverage a lot of the InDesign skills that you already have. One of the other links on this website, this bit.ly/ace-webinar is a free course. It's a bunch of online articles, and they basically show you from scratch how to do InDesign interactivity, from like doing basic animations and buttons, multi-state objects, all the way to some more advanced stuff. So those are all in that course. It's on the link on that page, along with a bunch of other stuff. Tim, so this is being recorded, and I like to share it with other designers. It can be attendance. So Tanya says that'll be under member resources. Also, feel free, if you want to share this link with other people, with colleagues, please do so. There's a link to my contact page on there too. So if you don't want to sign up for email list, I totally understand. But if you still have a question, something comes up later, you can write us on there, and I'll get back to you. And even somewhat tangential questions, sometimes we can provide some expertise. All right, it's looking like the questions have slowed down. I'm not seeing any new ones. So maybe I'll hand things back to Tanya. I don't know if you want to sign off or anything.
I think that we will, yeah, I think we'll call this.
I will stop sharing and I'll give you that. If you don't have this email address, let me go ahead and put it in the chat pod for you guys, because I'm about to take it off screen. There you go. All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I really appreciated you spending an hour with me. I hope you found this helpful, and hopefully you got some good ideas for new projects. And yeah, feel free to reach out. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Again, this will be posted by Celtic up in the member resources area. So, and don't forget, you can reach out to the learning community through the forum and through our Facebook page.